I would make it this far. They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back. I'm the new era, about to snap back. You ain't fitting for it, cause you all cap like. Hold up, I shoot my shot, wait, hold up. I'm really about to run this, go up. You know it's all net when it go up. Yeah.
Hey guys, thanks for popping into this week's episode of the Off the Grid podcast. As always, my name is Christian Marsh, here with my best buddy, Race Liberante.
What up?
And this week, special guest from across the pond, David Sera. How's that, buddy?
Hey, guys.
Yeah, stoked to have you here, man. Obviously, you know, it's a pleasure for us to get to talk to a legend like yourself.
For sure.
No, look, thanks very much for having me. That intro's got me all hyped up. I thought it was at a nightclub there for a second, but it's really nice to chat to you guys.
That's the vibe we're going for, man. We want everybody to be stoked to be a part of it, man.
No, awesome, and congratulations on what you guys are doing. It's great to see the global reach that Kart can get with with great access to you guys.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you so much. Obviously, you know, doing this with the Kart Chaser crew, I think definitely adds something different this time around. And really what they're doing with the sport as far as live streaming, I know that's something you guys have been kind of spoiled with in Australia, but we haven't had that here in the stateside, at least outside of events like maybe the Super Nats and I think a few Florida Winter Tours back when it was Rotex. But it's pretty neat to have for the sport. I think it does wonders for getting the sport in front of people that maybe wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you said, more people that actually see. Netflix now with Formula One has seen popularity grow in motorsport just huge. And so people ask, how do you get to Formula One? And obviously karting is the first breeding ground. So, the more people can see it, it can't hurt for sure.
That's an interesting...
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, let's just start with that. Is like, obviously, you know, you've had such a big part of the sport for the past probably 2 decades at this point. I mean, I think it's 18-time Australian karting champion, right? You know, you've such a decorated driver around the world. At what age do you think people have kind of need to get into the sport for any chance at getting down that pipeline to get into a professional car career?
Well, funny you say that because we've got an Australian driver who's basically knocking on the door of Formula One with Oscar Piastri. Yeah. And now a lot of people think you got to start at the age of 4, 5, 6. He started when he was 10, actually. Wow. So it's still very young to get into kart racing. But what I've noticed a lot now with coaching drivers is when you're coaching a 6 or 7-year-old kid, you've got to explain things like 50 times and you've got to draw it out for them. You've got to, really step by step. When you're talking to a 10, 12, 14-year-old driver, it's a bit more like we're talking now. Like, hey, Christian, if you hit this braking mark at this point, and they can sort of pick up things a lot faster. So I think that the rate of progression when you're a little bit older, you can still catch right back up. You don't have to start at 5 years of age. And if you think, if I'm 7, I'm too old, I can't have a career in motor racing, it's definitely not true.
Yeah, that's kind of the common consensus here stateside is you get these drivers who obviously they're in karts like from the age of 5 or 6. And then you see some of them now at 13, 14 years of age, they're already transitioning into cars. And we've got parents that are like flying their kids to Mexico because the regulations aren't there. They're sending F3 cars down for them to drive. I mean, even Race got the opportunity to run Trans Am at the Nashville Grand Prix this past week, and a 14-year-old won the event. So
it's scary.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And the problem is that the kids can learn so fast these days. Like the amount of stuff that they can watch online or just learning from experienced guys like myself and Race and whoever else is out there, you can pick up things quite fast. And like I said, it's scary when I'm on the grid racing against kids that I used to coach 4 or 5 years ago that you're like, far out, they're actually knocking on the door of beating you now. And I said they were just cadets, but they progress so quick now. And I don't think that seniors have to be 14 years of age. Like I think karting is sort of, it's getting too young, and now the experienced guys are getting crashed into the side of by these young kids who are reckless. They've got no budgets because the families are trying to push them through karting so quickly that they're losing a little bit of respect on track as well.
Yeah,
that is definitely a good topic. For sure. I've been saying it for a while. I feel like there should be like a in between, like a schoolboy class of some sort that's 14 to 18, and 18 and up should be your senior pro category, like most sports. But that there is a gap there in that age range. Like, damn well when you line up somebody, go to pass somebody that's 15, you're like, man, this kid may just chuck the wheel at me. You have no clue. And then usually guys around that you've been around for a long time and raced with and grew up in a different era, maybe where we kind of handled things ourselves when we were younger. You go up next to one of those guys and it's going to be a race down the straightaway and you'll fight it out into the corner. But it is crazy to see like that gap of just even respect for even your equipment. Like at that point is just so different. So agreed with that.
I've got a kid now, mate. Like I don't really want to go and wreck myself in the back. I don't have to. I've got to be a dad on at night now. So, look, there's obviously when you're a kid, you're reckless and you don't think, but that's when you actually probably get your fastest as well because you're not.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a happy median of being a little bit on edge, but also in control as well, and just that balancing act.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, the kid that ran in Trans Am last weekend, he's a phenom. I mean, he was a 3-time international champion by the time he was like 10 years of age. And, with our program with Stars in the U.S., we actually moved him into the pro shifter category at 13. And the kid's exceptional. But then other parents see that, and they're like, oh, my kid can do that too, which obviously isn't the case. Like, you get those exceptions, those rare cases, but not every parent thinks their kid has what it takes, and most of the time they don't.
Yeah, the reality is Brent's like 1 in a million. So, there's not many kids at that caliber, and it's okay. Like that's okay. I feel like age is but a number when it comes to certain things like experience or maybe the ability to have a level head. And obviously like the kid went and won a street race. Like it's so easy to overdrive. I did it. But at the end of the day, most kids are still progressing and learning. Like Dave said, like that kid started at 4 years old and has been literally bred to be a race car driver. It's different than the kid that still goes to school, every day. Like I don't even know if that kid does go to school. He's at a racetrack every time I'm there. So, it's just a different caliber, and it's okay not to even get into the sport until you're 13. Like there's plenty of kids that get in and they're like, man, I feel like I'm so far behind. And well, you are, but you actually, you're at a day and age where guys like David are out there doing his thing and, we're doing our thing. And there's so much like more media for you to take advantage of and really just learn from to excel your racing career so much faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously that's a good segue to talk about what Dave does with Kart Class. I mean, the ability to get coaching and have access to knowledge that's, obviously established and really makes a big difference. I think that's a big part of why kids get fast so quick nowadays. Don't tell me we lost him again, man. No way we lost him. We'll wait for him to come back this time because this one's for people who don't know, we've done this 3 times already. Here he is. He's back.
4th time's the charm. Dave Sera's back. We're good.
4th time's the charm. Good. At this point, if we lose him again, we're just going to chalk it up to Australia having shitty internet and just keep going.
Yeah. Earlier he was saying he actually has to turn other things off.
That's the problem.
You're in the future.
You are in the future.
We're like 18 hours in front of you. So yeah, exactly. I'm in the future over here.
Yeah, I want to know why you haven't warned us about bad shit that's happened, man. If you're in the future, you should be hooking us up with that knowledge.
Mate, our problem is we've got kangaroos eating our freaking our internet lines over here, so we just got to bypass that.
So I don't know if you heard us, but we were kind of chatting about Kart Class a little bit, and how like what you offer the sport is really cool, and probably a big part of the reason why drivers get so fast, so quick nowadays.
Yeah, look, the Kart Class idea was in 2018, and it was basically trying to fill a void where people can't access coaching at some of their local kart tracks. And so we know that motor racing and kart racing is no exception. It can be quite expensive. So when families are sort of spending $5,000 or $10,000 to get into the sport, they might go to the local track and have literally no idea what they're doing. So we're trying to fill that void by offering world-class coaching that's accessible basically 24/7 with your phone, your tablet, or your laptop. And we've got different programs depending on what skill level you actually are. Because if you're a beginner, you just need to know the basics of race lines and apexes and how to overtake and why you might be spinning off in the wet conditions. And then sort of once you've progressed through that, we've got, more advanced programs that sort of work on the mindset. So when things are going shit on the track, you can basically overcome that, your nerves before the race, and how to overtake and basically pressure opposition to make a mistake. So we're trying to cover all bases on how to be a complete racing driver. And that's where our Kart class sort of originated from, seeing different sports offering online coaching. And obviously through COVID, we've seen that online learning has sort of been more of a worldwide thing now, where you don't have to be at the track to still improve your skills.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So is the Kart class thing, is that like a subscription service where you're getting access to curriculum and lessons and things like that? Or is it more of like a one-on-one where people can send in, onboard video, things of that sort to get coaching?
Yeah, so what we do is we have all our videos on the platform. We have diagrams to print off and to fill in, and worksheets as well to fill in, because some kids like to learn by watching, other kids like to learn by reading. So we've tried to basically cover 4 elements of learning. And the worksheets have worked quite well, where drivers watch, then actually write down what they've learned. So you can use it as a booklet at the track, where mum or dad's like, why aren't you, at the start, while you're leaving 5 cart links to the driver in front of you, they can watch the video at the track if they want. They can look at their worksheets, they can look at their diagrams, and one of those 4 ways they should be able to improve their next race start next time they hit the track. So basically, it's just a one-off.
Race, fill it in. Fill it in. You know what he was going to say.
No, I don't.
Neither do I. Yeah, we're trying our best here, guys.
This is okay, though. This is part of it.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah, we're off the grid. We're going off the grid, just like David's internet connection.
He is now off the grid. He's going to come back in. He already did once.
Wow,
this is
man.
the 4th time we've tried this.
Look at the way it paused on his face, though. Let's just leave that up there, big screen. He's back.
There he is. It's
David,
okay.
Sera, karting, Jesus.
Kart chasers.
Mate, this is hard work, this live stream stuff. This is hard. This is hard work. I forgot how hard it was.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, we get it, man. It's obviously probably just issues maybe with the fact that you're on the other side of the planet. But, yeah, dude, I think Kart class,
I reckon,
what you offer is...
like I said, luckily...
Like you said, luckily we can talk for ourselves, too.
Yeah, it's great because we have good internet because America's fucking sweet. No, I'm just, it's, obviously we're going to run into some of these issues with international guests, but I think it's important that we have people on the podcast that offer a unique perspective to what we have here. Because, man, in America, it kind of ends up being like an echo chamber where people have like the same ideas and the same sort of set of experiences. And when you're in that environment, you're going to hear people who, maybe have the same thoughts and opinions as you. So it's cool to get to hear, from someone who has a totally different set of experiences. David's obviously like raced in, I want to say, like 18 different countries.
Yeah, a bunch.
Yeah, man. And things like that. It's cool for sure. Hopefully he pops back in here in a minute. We'll let him sort his stuff out. But in the meantime, why don't you and I just chat on Nashville last week? Crashville, dude. You got the opportunity to run the Nashville GP down in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And it started off pretty dope. Obviously, didn't end quite that way. But how did that whole thing come together, man?
Yeah, I've been trying to work on some carts to car stuff for the next generation of drivers that we're trying to help raise. And I got together with B2 Motorsports, really actually to get some kids into some Spec Racer Fords and just some entry-level SCCA style racing, because it seems like every kid that's moving up into cars right now is jumping from like a go-karting budget to like F4 or USF 2000. And some of that stuff's just not feasible for some families, and it scares some people into the car realm, where I know plenty of guys that are factory drivers for different manufacturers now that came straight out of SCCA and Spec Miata. So trying to build a different ladder for the average Joe is kind of like something I've always had close to home. Now, even TA2 is not like easily accessible, but at least it's sellable with some sponsorship, and you can kind of get going that way. And that's kind of what we were able to put together with Armada Analytics and the B2 Motorsports crew. They wanted to put me in the car. I have a lot of experience in that style of racing. It's a lot like a pro late model on a oval track that I spent a lot of time in. So it was something that was familiar to me. It's something that I've been wanting to do. It's something that I've dabbled with in the past and done some engineering and setup stuff for. So was super interested in doing it. And what better way than, a street track. But Friday we were pretty quick. Top 10 both sessions. I think we were 7th and 9th. And had some brake fade issues, so we were trying to fix that, and a lot of people were having the similar issues on track. So everybody was pretty much working pretty hard at that all weekend, and I thought we had it all kind of dialed up, and we made some major changes to the brakes overnight. And I don't think I had the bias set right when I went out to qualify, because there's no warm up. And that's the big difference in car racing. You get 2 practice sessions on one day, and the next day is your qualifying and your main event. Like, there's no warm ups in the morning. You go straight to quali, and that's kind of like your test session. So, as a driver, what do you do? Do you baby it around, make sure it feels right, wear out your new tires, trying to figure it out, or do you just go for it because you have a shot at a top 3, top 5 chance at the end of the day? And I chose to go for it and went a little deeper than I had been on used tires, like I feel like I should have, and ended up locking the rear brakes up, and it backed itself into the wall, and it just wasn't enough to, really wasn't going to get repaired before the main event, being it was 2.5 hours later. So it was a bummer, but it's something that I'm going to do a little bit more of, I think, in the future. The sponsor was super happy. I feel like the big thing I took away from that, and the big thing I was still able to add to those guys, we didn't race, so that's a huge thing when somebody brings clients and some of their employees there to watch you race, because they're their names on the side of the car. We spent our time with them and hung out, and tried to educate them on some more about racing, and keep them involved as much as I possibly could, as if I was on the track. And we watched that race together and had a great time. And I think it's something we're going to do in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I know that obviously it's not how you wanted the weekend to go, but what a cool opportunity to get to pop in and run with those guys. And obviously, I think you showed that you've got the pace. Driving a car that, like you said, having some brake issues, having to pump the brakes, like you lost the brake line, going over that bridge from 160 miles an hour, dude. That's crazy.
Yeah, so, sketchy for sure.
We'll get it next year. Why don't I've actually got a little bit of onboard that I snuck in here from your race. Let's check this out. A lap at the Nashville GP. Hey,
Dave's
look
back.
at that. We got some onboard and back with David Sera.
Mate, that lap looking pretty intense, actually. Straight circuits are always way more exciting than a normal normal circuit. So that was good driving. Awesome.
So narrow. so narrow,
it was
man.
tight.
Like half the IndyCar field actually dropped out during the race. It's just like at a circuit like that, obviously it's kind of twofold, because for a driver like Race, it really, being in the city, brings opportunity for sponsors and businesses to come in and kind of schmooze clients and bring in some employees and things like that. But man, there's no room for mistakes. I don't know if you caught, Race literally had some brake fade issues and just kind of lost the fronts, and in the data was on the brakes for the same amount of time, slowed to the same amount of speed, and just having that rear lockup for like an eighth of a second was just enough to back the car around, and he missed the tires by maybe 6 inches at the exit of the corner and just tagged the concrete wall. It bent the back of the car enough he couldn't even run in the final on Saturday.
No, that's crazy. That's when you need sort of one of your rivals who you don't like in front of you. So if you do have a brake issue, you can just sort of give them a love tap on the way through.
Exactly.
Absolutely, man.
And there's no pushbacks in race cars.
No pushbacks.
It just costs more. It just costs more when you have a damage. That's the other issue.
Yeah, I wish I would have wrecked the go-kart. It'd be half as much to fix as the race car is.
I know.
It's all good.
Yeah,
but
certainly,
now that we have you back, man, let's jump back into wrapping up some of that kart class stuff. I mean, I think it's super cool for the sport. The big thing that we've brought up in the last episode was, even like young entrepreneurs in karting, like guys like you and me and Christian that have stayed around in karting, like so many people that, maybe we looked up to at one point seem to have like moved on more so into a different career path instead of sticking here and doing something they were maybe even more passionate about. But having an innovative idea with technology the way it is, it's so much easier for us to come up with ways to monetize, even helping new drivers get into the sport. It cuts their costs in half, because if you want a good coach, I know guys I've paid for coaching $500-$600 a day, and that's one day. I mean, that's only a bit of information you can retain, something that you can be on a subscription base to, that you can review and review and review. I mean, like I said, we use your stuff with MPG, and we review the same video sometimes 10 times in a day, because that's what we're working on that day. So it's super cool to see other people in the sport that have made names for themselves, that have had success, that are staying in the sport and giving back with their knowledge and feedback through entrepreneurship like yourself.
Yeah, look, I'm stuck in karting now. It's been 25, 26 years. And in saying that stuck, I do love it. That's why I'm still involved. And yeah, I've just got a passion for coaching, like I said. So it's trying to give, like I said, Australia is such a big country. We've got, similar to America, there's tracks that are like 35 hours away from where I live in Melbourne. And now that parent who just buys a cart, they've got no chance if they are just trying to wing it themselves. And they might try and race a big race where all these national drivers come to town, and they find themselves at the back. They don't know who to ask for help. And basically they give up the sport. They say, why am I spending all this money? So yeah, that's the whole reason why we got kart class to happen. And I think it allows drivers from America, from Europe, from New Zealand as well, just close to Australia, to listen to someone else, my experiences. Now we've got Danny Formel on board to coach drivers in shifter racing, because look, I've won a shifter Australian championship before, but I definitely regard Danny Formel as a better race driver than me in shifter racing. So we're trying to latch on to people that are good in their disciplines. So Danny Formel's a great shifter driver. So teach drivers how he would race against them. We've got a fitness element coming soon. So it's actually going to be from a USA fitness coach. So again, people that are better than me at fitness. I'm terrible at fitness. That's probably my biggest downfall when it comes to karting. And I've lost the Supernats before from not being fit and losing concentration, having to slow my speed down so I can make the finish. And so it really annoys me now to think back and going, if I was just better at fitness, or if I was just a bit better at my race starts, if I was a bit better at my overtaking, whatever that one or two elements could be, you might have won more races or had a bit better results.
Yeah, and you can be, right now the best driver out there, and there's still something you can always be learning. I mean, coming fresh off of the last national win I got, I'm still watching videos and still trying to progress, because that's what your competition's always doing too, right? They're always refreshing on something, somewhere in the data you did lack on the weekend, and it's something that you can go back and do and look at. I'm waiting for a Kart class episode about hitting curbs. As long as you got Danny on that one, I'm going to
100%
rewatch that one, because that's got to be an episode. How to smash a curb like Danny Formal.
Mate, he's loose, that guy. But he's a pleasure to watch as well, because he's putting the kart in spots that other drivers can't. It does help that he's got a little bit bigger frame, and it absorbs hitting the curbs a little bit more than what a 14-year-old smaller driver, may have to hit with a lot of lead ballast on their kart. But it's cool to incorporate, like I said, a USA coach now. Our mindset coach who works on nerves and emotions. Like the emotions episode that I got is like when your dad's throwing spanners around because he's pissed off with your on-track session. How does that help the driver? No, it doesn't help the driver. The driver's timid now. He's nervous to make mistakes for the next race, because if he makes the same mistakes, what's going to happen with the parent? Are they going to start throwing stuff around again? Are they going to start swearing at their kid? So it's actually good for the parents to watch some of these videos to go, you know what? I'm that guy. I'm that person who's having a go at my kid. That's not the right way to behave around children, especially. But other people see it. Like, you've got a team of RPG as a team of 40 drivers. If you've got one or two parents carrying on, they're going to say, mate, we don't want you. It brings the whole team morale down.
Yeah.
And when things are going good, you seem to miss a lot of crashes, and you're having your best results when there's no pressure on you. And then when you're in the dumps, you're finding the crashes, and, you're causing stuff because you're not in a good mindset as well. So our mindset coach that we have on board is from the UK. He has experience with Formula One drivers. Again, better drivers than me. So we're trying to latch onto people who are better in their chosen fields, and to help racing drivers worldwide with their knowledge.
Yeah, man. I mean, like you said, with having parents under a tent that are kind of throwing off the vibe for not only their drivers, but for other drivers. That's something we even focus on, with our karting series with the Stars program is, we've suspended dads, and unfortunately you lose the kid as well. But, parents throwing bumpers and things at their kids in the scale line, and 7-year-old kids, the dad's leaning over the Park for May fence, screaming at his kid pass. And it's like, man, who is that good for? It's certainly not good for that kid. And
no.
I know Race and I probably had a little bit of that as kids, not having a coach and just working with our dads. But
I did as well. I definitely had my dad into me, like, pull your finger out, we're going to sell everything. You're wasting our time. And as a kid, I'd be in tears going, far out. I'm trying to impress my dad, but I'm also don't want to make these mistakes. And it is hard. Like, it's hard to keep bouncing back from these, like, bang, you're down. I'm actually not punching. Dad wasn't punching me. Like, but like these little, knockdowns. These little knockdowns of, you got to pull your finger out, because there's a lot of pressure on kids these days. Parents are spending way more money in karting than they ever have before. So that just then relates to the kid going far out. Mum and dad are spending a lot of money. They expect results. And if I'm not paying attention because I'm on my iPad playing, I don't know, whatever games the kids are playing these days, then, the parents have got, they're sort of getting stuck into them a lot more.
And I think that's, like you mentioned, part of the special relationship between, mechanics or tuners, driver coaches, and the drivers, which I'm sure you get a little bit of that with, like, your Sera driver development program, right? And working, one-on-one with kids in Australia in person. But I know that that's something where I've even seen drivers, like, under Race's tent, which end up being family, and they end up, they communicate on more of like a family basis, because they're spending all this time together, and it's such an amount of trust that you have to put into someone who's coaching you and their wisdom and what they're trying to offer you, that it creates a pretty special bond that you don't see maybe even in a lot of other sports.
No, what I've found is probably in the first year of coaching a driver, they're definitely listening. They're absorbing the information. They want to learn. Then after that year, they start to become more of a friend, which has its pros and cons, because now they're not sort of listening to you as much. They're sort of taking it for granted. They have a bit of back chat now, some of these kids now. Not like, again, but, like, because they're at friends stage now.
Yeah.
So it's that balancing act of, I'm still in the best interest of you. The information I'm trying to explain to you, I want you to do that because I know it will make you go better. But like I said, sometimes then the kids know best at that teenage years where again, it comes back to that, not listen to the parent, not listen to the coach, because they've got that such a tight bond now.
Yeah, and that's exactly why under our tent we've been utilizing the videos, like, because there's kids I've worked with for years now, and I'm like an older brother to them, not so much their coach or their mentor, more like a brother. And you have a special bond with them that they just stop listening to you too. Like, it's like, oh yeah, you Mr. Know-It-All. I'm like, that's who I'm supposed to be to you, as Mr. Know-It-All, dude. Like, what the fuck?
Cannot wait for one of these kids that you're like, hey mate, you got to break a little bit later, and they're like, oh yeah, break later, like you did at Nashville, Uncle Race.
Right. Well, here's a story for you. Actually, this is quite a bad story, but I flew over to Perth, which is about a 3,000 kilometer, so I'm guessing about 2,000 miles away from Melbourne. And I was doing a coaching session with a group of drivers who I've never met before. Got a hire car from the airport, and on the way to the track have rear-ended someone. Not at high speed, but have pushed the bumper and the bonnet in. So I've rocked up to the track to coach these drivers, and I've stoved the front of the car. So I'm like, drivers, if you brake too late, this is what can happen. It's a real life experience. So don't do that before a coaching session, especially to new drivers.
It's important.
You off right there.
Like what the value that you're offering is that experience. It's I had a moment where I broke too late and totally binned the guy in front of me, or back when we were kids, no pushbacks, no big bumpers, things like that. You would hurt yourself, or hurt somebody else. And I think that kids nowadays don't have that level of responsibility, and not only because they're not paying for the equipment, but really because the risk factor is not there as much anymore, it's like a great thing. It's brilliant that karting's safer, but before it was safer, you maybe thought twice before you made a move on somebody.
For sure.
100%. I think when I started, there was actually no front nose cones. There was no front bumper at all. So when you're pushing someone down the straight, your foot was on the exhaust pipe almost.
Yeah.
Like you're actually kicking them basically. And, looking back now, it's quite dangerous going at the speeds that we were traveling at. But as you said, you learn the hard way. We're now kids. The one thing I don't like about clutches on karts is that kids spin out, and then before they even know or realize their mistake, they just drive off. And they're going to the next corner. And they're not even thinking about why they've spun off. Where previously no clutches, you would spin off in the rain, and you'd have to sit behind the tyre barrier, all sad, going, why is everyone else driving around the track? But you watching them realizing, that's what I did, and that's why I've ended up here where I am. You can learn things a lot faster where it was a bit harder. That's what I believe.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good topic as well, and not something that we've really had as much here in the States. Obviously, you guys spent a lot of time in Australia with Formula Y using the Clubman engine, right? What we would call the Yamaha, the KT100 here. And then at some point, you guys switched to the KA engine, which I don't even think people, the K is taking off in the States. I don't even think people understand that it stands for Karting Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
So you went from something that's direct drive, incredibly involved in the way you have to drive it on a circuit, to now you have this KA, which maybe kind of mimics a direct drive kart once the clutch is engaged, but you get a lot of extra leeway in instances like that. How have you seen that kind of impact the racing culture in Australia?
I would say that the transition from one engine to the other engine has a lot of negative thoughts around it, because people don't like change. There's the increased expenses of, now my so-called race engine, which is like a $5,000 engine, is basically worthless. So there's a lot of negativity around, what am I going to do with these 4 or 5 race engines now? But in the long run, it's provided a lot more level platform, so that the average guy who just gets into the sport, he can go and buy a brand new K engine and have an equal opportunity. That's what I believe. Where with the Yamaha engine, if you didn't have a known engine, you could be 0.3, 0.5 of a second off straight away. And that's not fair for the average guy who's getting into the sport. You want them to have an equal opportunity, so they stay in and they basically provide more racing as well. Like, there's bigger fields, there's more competitive fields. I sort of treat it like a Moto 3, Moto 2 competition, where there's a line of karts, because there's not those freak engines that you can just drive away from the field. It comes down to racecraft. And I sort of like the class. I don't race it very often, but I think it offers a lot of merit for racers.
Yeah, and it comes at it's pretty economical, even compared to, I don't know about how it was there, but the Yamaha days for us were like like you said, I mean, there was guys going through a bunch of them to find two solid badass ones, or there were guys that getting procedures done to them that were completely borderline illegal, but spending thousands of dollars to get these things done to them. And whereas the KA, I mean, the rule set has been built pretty well to where the engine builder is pretty much just crossing the T's and dotting the I's on the motor and giving it its blessing, and then off you go.
I like how you just kind of glazed over the fact that some pretty notable engine builders were just EDMing Yamaha motors and pretending that they picked through a pallet of them and found the good ones. I mean, really, that's what hurt the sport here is you kind of had that era where it was the suitcase motor and people were picking through, finding the best shit. But, kind of shame on the promoters for not changing that blowdown rule in the Yamaha, because at the point where people realized that was the performance difference, you just spend an extra couple $1,000, get it EDM'd, and off you went. But now you're taking a motor that was, I want to say probably $900 US, and you're making it, a $6,000 racing engine. You might as well have run KZ at that point.
Exactly, and that's exactly the same as in Australia as well. We've actually got an engine claiming rule now. So at our Australian championships, if a driver finishes in the top 3, other competitors in that same race have the opportunity to pay recommended retail and buy your engine. Now, again, we know that these engines can sell upwards of $5,000-$10,000, and that engine just won the Australian title. You can go up there and say, I want to buy that engine for $3,000, whatever the Australian dollar works out to be. But not many people have gone. It's sort of like a black area where you don't go and claim someone's engine.
It's like a respect thing.
Yeah.
Respect. And a couple of people have done it, and you're sort of frowned upon if you're that one guy who's gone and said, I want Christian's engine, I want Race's engine because he went and beat me. It's like you got to work a bit harder with your engine builder, your kart setup, and your driving skills to lift your ability in all those 3 areas as well. But like you said, the respect is a big thing, and the engine claiming rule, it's there, but it hasn't really been sort of taken advantage of too often.
Well, I think there's that dark, hidden thing between all team owners that, unless somebody, it's the spirit of intent of that rule is to claim somebody's shit that's actually cheated up. Like you're actually, is something that just is not possible. It's not humanly possible that was just pulled off on the racetrack. Okay, yeah, you claim the engine, but the guy beat you to the line by, half a cart length.
It's not that
guy. Yeah, it wasn't his fucking motor. He raced you harder.
Yes.
Like, it's what it is.
Exactly.
But there's a bit of respect there, So we have the same thing here, and some guy, I've been claimed, our stuff's been claimed a lot, so I'm a little salty with that one. More so than some.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, though, you get people here that, I'm sure it's the same everywhere, but there's this mentality of Ryan Norberg's only winning because, he's got the best shit. But the reality is not only is their engine program obviously very good under a team like Rollison, and they have the advantage of having a full-time engine program. There's somebody on that team with a dyno that's going to these facilities weeks in advance and getting everything set up. But we also have this culture here where if a kid's not winning, it's immediately the equipment. It's the parents are like, oh, he needs the newest, this year it's a Tony Kart and next year it's a Kart Republic, and he's got to have a switch motor. He's got to have, so on and so forth. And the reality is your kid's balls probably just aren't big enough, or he's not, paying enough attention to his driver coach. Or people should definitely invest way more eagerly in coaching than equipment, tenfold.
It's a lot easier to blame something out of your control, though. Like, who's going to go and say my kid's shit?
Absolutely.
You're not you just don't want, you don't want to believe that either. Yeah. So you just say, let's go and buy a bigger engine or buy multiple engines. But you can see they can buy 4 different chassis brands and they're still in position 10. And they've bought 4 different engine builders and they're still in the same position. So with my race team, I sort of have it that once you leave to go somewhere else, don't come back. Like, I don't care if your kid's 7 or if your kid's 15. Don't knock on my door again, because once you don't believe that I'm in the best interest of your kid, then that's fine. It's no stress to me. I'll just get the next kid going to beat your kid. It's no big deal. But it's the whole, you want to believe it's the engine builder, or you want to believe it's a different chassis. I've stuck with one chassis brand for my whole karting career, which is an Arrow kart. Australian-made chassis, which, to be fair, sometimes it's been pretty shit, but we stuck with it and we made it a little bit better than shit. Like, you still had to put up with it for 6 or 12 months. My dad never gave up with the Arrow brand. And then, we've gone and raced the Supernats and top qualified. And won races and finished on the podium with guys who have got European support or American support, and we're literally making a kart that's about 20 minutes away from my house here, and racing these guys at the biggest races in the world with an Australian-made product. It shows that you can do it if you persevere with your kart and not just give up and say, oh, it's the engine or it's the chassis.
Well, at the end of the day, some of the best drivers, I tell drivers all the time, you're never going to have the perfect setup, whether it's lap 1 or lap 20. It may be perfect somewhere in between there, but it doesn't stay the same the whole race. It's physically impossible. And at some point, the best drivers, the great drivers, always push through that because they have the technique to push through a tight entry or a loose exit or whatever it may be. You adjust your driving throughout the run to adapt to that, to maximize what you have at that moment. And that's what separates, in my opinion, the good from the great drivers, to get the job done at the end of the day.
100%. You can give Norberg's engine to someone who's in mid-pack. He might go up the field maybe 2 or 3 spots. He's not going to go and win the next SCUSA race. It just won't happen. He doesn't have the experience, the racecraft and stuff to go from 15th place to first place. You got to earn your way. You got to get to 10th, and you got to get to 8th, and then 6th, and you just slowly just chip away, and you're learning each step. But you won't go from 15th to first like that.
Well, and I always try to tell people, and it's something you touched on with your relationship to Aero, is like it matters way less what go-kart you're on and way more about the support you have in your region. So like pick the go-kart that when you go to the racetrack, there's someone there who's, turned 1,000 laps on the thing or has spare parts so that when you bust a hub or an axle, there's someone with that support. That's way more valuable than being on, whatever chassis Formal is winning the SCUSA race on, because he's won it on a DR. He's won it on an FK. He's now going to win it with Rollison, I'm certain. And the reality is that doesn't matter nearly as much as having that local, network and community to work off of.
You need trust as well. Like engine builders are it's a touchy subject because engine builders hate when obviously you go somewhere else. So when you build that loyalty and that trust with someone, they're always going to dig deep for you, whether it's a driver coach, whether it's the chassis tuner, or the engine builder. If you support them over a number of years, they're always going to find that last 1% that they can, because they know that you're all working together. But if you go from one engine builder to the next engine builder to a different chassis, everyone's going to say, why am I bothering with this guy? Because if it doesn't work for one race weekend, he's going to go anyway. So you don't really care about that person because you don't have that trust and that relationship with someone. So that's why I've had 2 engine builders in 26 years. Dad worked at one place for 13 years. He worked at the next place for 13 years. So that was my racing career for 2 engine builders. One chassis the whole time. Every Supernats that I've ever raced has been with Eric Jones's team, the Kart Sport North America team that's no longer around now, but basically, again, one team. And it's building up that team rapport with people so that they've got the trust in you and you've got the trust in them.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like I tell customers and kids that we work with all the time, at the end of the day, the data doesn't lie, and the data will always tell us if it's the driver, the engine, or the chassis. It'll always tell us the truth no matter what. And it's up to your trust in the people you work with to take that feedback and apply it towards your racing career. And sometimes it's going to be you, and it is what it is. But the sooner you accept that, the better you'll be, and the easier road you'll have all the way to the end of your racing career, wherever that may be.
Yeah, the video footage has screwed a lot of people now with the braking and the throttle. Like you can sort of see, and you say to the kid, "Are you going flat out through this corner?" Yeah, I'm going flat out. And you watch that video, and you can see that the acceleration's gone down. Like, mate, I can see it. Like it doesn't lie anymore. Like you said, it doesn't lie. So, the people that can accept it, they go forward a lot faster.
Absolutely, and obviously your relationship with Aero started with just you running with the Aero team with DPE on their karts, and then at some point you started the Deadly brand, which obviously you had a bunch of success here in the States on Deadly with the Supernats and other events. Tell us a little bit about kind of that process, where you came up with Deadly. What's the story behind that brand?
So I was always supporting Aero karts, and it was just me and my dad out of a trailer and racing against the factory Aero team and other teams that are out there. And we were beating them quite often. So even though it's a good thing that we were still in that Aero brand, they were like, let's actually utilize Dave's setup and his driving and his knowledge to actually progress our race team as a whole. So then I became a factory driver for the Arrow team in about 2006 or 7. I can't remember exactly. And winning a lot of national titles in that span of 2007 to 2014 as recognition of supporting one brand my whole time. Arrow sort of thought, well, it'd be nice to offer you your own brand of go-karts. So it's still the exact same model. You can just pick and choose the color scheme. So at the time I was sponsored by Monster Energy drinks. So that's where the green sort of came into it. And the Deadly was just like a nickname that I copped on an international racing trip. People just like Deadly Dave. And I don't know how, but it just sort of stuck. It's one of those things. And I sort of had a big following of Valentino Rossi. I just sort of admired his character. I was sort of a bit of a showboater back in the day, so I'd like to sort of stop on the side of the track and do some funky stuff like Valentino Rossi sort of did. So we just sort of half copied the font of Valentino Rossi's The Doctor, and we just put that on the side of a car.
That's rad, man, for sure. It's cool seeing Valentino in cars now running. He's running the GT World Challenge. He just ran the 24 hours at Spa. That's awesome, man. It's so cool.
Yeah, I think once a racer, you're a racer. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what you're racing. Like I said, karts and the Trans Am stuff. You've got it in your blood, and it's a competitive spirit. So you want to always push yourself to be, better in those disciplines.
I can tell you right now, I will never get on a bike and try and do what he has ever done.
Nah.
Those guys got some screws loose for sure.
Exactly.
How long did your brand stay around? Like, as somebody that has a brand myself, like I'm curious. Like, I remember seeing it here, and it was such a cool thing. And obviously, you have such a fan base in the United States. When you came and raced here, I mean, you bombarded with people at the Super Nats every year. It was insane.
Yeah, so I think it started in 2014, and we stopped the brand in 2020. It was more just, again, like Tony Kart has 3 or 4 or 5 brands underneath their umbrella. Mm-hmm. They got a lot bigger market share than what Arrow does being an Australian made kart. And so we sort of thought that rather than trying to promote 2 or 3 brands out of Arrow, why don't we just get the main face of Arrow back on Arrow? So that's why, and look, I don't race it very often anymore, so I was more than happy to take that and just try and run Arrow karts now. But look, I think I definitely saw race wins in Japan, in New Zealand, in America, in Canada. I'm not sure if we had race wins in England, but there was definitely karts over in England as well, with the Deadly brand. So, it's cool to see people in your race suits, and Will Power would get into a Deadly kart sometimes out of GoPro, and AJ Allmendinger raced one at the Super Nats as well. So, you got these star racing drivers actually racing one of your brands. Like I said, it's very exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. Another chapter in the life, right?
Absolutely.
No, it's been a busy life with kart racing, but like I said, I wouldn't change anything. I've met some great people, and my lifelong friends are still from karting. Like I said, 25 years with these same guys that race together, crash together, party together when we sort of stopped racing. Now we're back into coaching, against each other, but we're still very respectful, and I enjoy that relationship with these guys.
Now, having competed, you mentioned, Japan, England, America, obviously. Where is your favorite place? Obviously, Australia being part of that mix too, that you've competed in karting. And what are some of the differences you see, kind of in the pockets of the sport around the globe?
Look, hands down, my favorite race is the Super Nats. It's Las Vegas for starters, so that's always a fun thing for anyone over 21. But I like the element of going to a fresh track every year, so that you can't get 3 weeks of testing in beforehand. Now, when you're traveling from Australia, which is so far away from any real international racetrack, it's hard to rock up to Europe and expect to get results when you got Friday practice and then you've got some races, and before you know it, the weekend's over. So anytime I advise drivers now that we're going to a race, I say, go to Super Nats. Europeans go there. South American drivers go there. Australian drivers, they all rock up to a level playing field. And a street circuit for me throws in a whole new element. There's a risk factor where if you get it wrong, you're going to pay the consequences. You go into the barriers. So it's all about being on your toes from session 1 all the way through to Super Sunday. So I sort of like that element of, rocking up to a track that is low grip. It sort of suits my body size, being a taller driver in the car. I can generate a little bit more grip than other drivers can. But it's just that level playing field. Like I said, I've raced in some big races at the Rotax Grand Finals, and like I said, the Supernats. But for me, I just think European has more money invested into motor racing. So I'd say that they got more depth. Like Australia's got maybe 15 top class drivers in the top categories. Europe's probably got 35. No better than the Australian drivers, but just more depth because the weight of numbers is basically is there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we're starting to see that pick up a little bit in the States. For the past probably 5 to 10 years, I feel like it's really been maybe 5 at some events like the Super Nationals, 10 drivers in any category that can win. But I think the KA platform has kind of had an impact on that as well because, like you said, the parity in the motors really makes it about the drivers, and having that sort of environment to develop has really kind of changed the amount of drivers who understand what it takes to be up front, sim racing, and the fact that drivers are able to be in the seat all the time. That sort of thing helps. Kind of just a question I have for Race is, like, you've obviously won the Supernats. How did that impact your comfort level in Nashville last week, being like a very similar, it's obviously narrow, there's zero room for error, things like that. Did that make you feel more comfortable in the car, or, were you still, just shitting your pants going over the bridge?
It definitely helps. I mean, street racing's, I don't know how it is in Australia, but we do street race often here in the States. And I do enjoy it. It's my favorite type of racing. Like Dave said, there's elements there that you don't see at other races or racetracks. You don't get to have the experience of a local or get to go and even spend your money and test early. It's not, you can't do it. So it's a more level playing field for everybody, which is why, especially in the car stuff, I chose that race. But going back to it, in my opinion, the Supernats are a race like the Supernats where you can't really have one bobble throughout the week. I mean, one screw up qualifying on, your weekend's pretty much fucked. Like,
yeah,
you screw up qualifying, I'm sure Dave's been there. I mean, you had your top 5 in practice and you get something go, wrong. You made a bad change in qualifying. You end up 25th, dude. Good luck, because you're going to get crashed in a heat race or something. You're going to add a variable to your week, which is very similar to professional car racing. It's limited track time. So you have to be on your toes. You have to be focused. You have to be working extra hard in the pit during and between sessions to get faster than your competition. And you're limited on the schedule. I mean, it's very quick days at the Supernats being cut in half. Your day's done by lunchtime, or, you go from lunchtime to 6 p.m. and that's it. Like, that's all the time you get. And the next day is another series session, and the next day's racing, and the next day's the final, and that's it. So I think it teaches drivers and it helps drivers, put them in that element. If you ever make it in professional motorsports, that's the limited track time you're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's obviously any event that's unique like that also, I remember David back on Kart 360, back when that was a thing. Those guys did some content from Vegas, and I remember hearing David talk about how racing under the lights was kind of a unique experience for you. That's something that we tend to do maybe a little bit more in the States, especially in the places in the country where it's just blistering hot during the summer. They actually race during the nighttime quite a bit, but we've tried even with events here like Rock Island Grand Prix. I think if that event were under the lights at night, if we could get the city on board with that, that would really step the game up for some of those, events that are kind of one-offs, make them feel a little bit more special.
Oh yeah, racing under lights, it feels fast, and vision's down as well, so it brings that driver element up a level as well. But like I said, the Supernats it's just like, cause it's not a championship. So like guys like us, we can rock up and just go all out. If it comes off, great. You can get on the podium, we can have a race win. If it doesn't, obviously you got 12 months to look back on and say, shit, if I had just done A, B, or C differently, it may have been a different outcome. But that's what I sort of like. We've got too many championships happening in Australia at the moment. So it's like, even in heat races, don't go for a risk because you've got, a 5-round championship and you're just all about accumulation. That's good and it has its own merit, but you need these one-off races where it brings spectators to the track knowing that every single race there's going to be action. And I think that has, like I said, Now sometimes I don't even bother watching some races because you're like, you know what, it's going to be a procession. They're not going to take too many risks. They're experienced drivers. They know not to muck up in heat 3. But as Supernats, when there's no pre-final as well, there's 3 heats, then a final. You've got to take some risks in those heats to bump yourself up for the all-important Sunday as well. So it's that risk to reward. And I think street circuits under lights, city in the background, like everything is there just to sort of it's spotlight on Supernats. It's one hell of a race.
Now, is there any races in so we have the Supernats, right? Our biggest race, one of the biggest races in the world. What is different here per se than there? Like, do you guys have a marquee event that, is something that we should start looking into to coming over there to try and run?
We used to have it was a race on the Gold Coast. So again, going with that similar vibe of having it at a destination where people would want to come over, have a bit of a holiday, and enjoy the Gold Coast beaches and things like that. And it was at a circuit that is more of a rental circuit, but it was like 1.7 Ks long. It was like it was a nice facility and a huge circuit, and you couldn't drive there until that race. So it had that Supernats feel of no home testing advantage, massive straight for slipstreaming, so really close racing. And we actually had a lot of international drivers for the KZ category. So like David Foray, Anthony Abbas, Marlon Kremers, just trying to think.
I know Paolo used to run that event. Yeah.
The Conto. Yeah, so we actually had more international drivers for the KZ being our headline category and so on. And so unfortunately that track's actually now being taken over by the council or something. They've had to move locations and it hasn't ran for the last 2 years and they haven't sort of found that one marquee location. But same thing, we had like surfboards as the trophies, and these are trophies that you can't just buy. Like I can't just go and you had to go and win it to go and get that trophy. And like the Supernats has their like the chips and things like that they're symbolic to that event, which is is really cool. And that's probably one event that we need to get back onto the calendar somehow to lure some international interest again.
Was that the Race of Champions? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, we call it Race of Stars.
Race of Stars, that's what it was.
And the international drivers, like we'd have probably 8 or 9 of the best KZ drivers competing against our own Australian drivers. It was good to test your skills up against those guys as well.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely one of the coolest parts about racing in the U.S. that we can have an event like the Supernats here, because regardless of if it's maybe promoted the same way as like a CIK format or things like that, it really is a special event that all over the world people know the Supernats and people know that race. And I would say that, racing is obviously a sport based around wanting to be better than the other guy. And I think that to be able to say you've won a Super Nationals, especially in a premier category, is almost as valuable, credit wise, as being able to say like, oh, I've won a European championship or I won the KZ2 Worlds. Even, to have an event like that is pretty special for the country.
Well, I'm pissed off that I've never got one of those wins yet, like race, but it's still something that eats at you, like knowing that, like I said, it's a world-class race event on a level playing field. And once you've won one, no one can ever take it away from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any plans to come back and run Supernats? 25th year this year. They just put up all that dough for the premier categories. Are we going to see David Sera back in the States?
Mate, I've entered Masters, and it doesn't feel right. Like, I've never entered a Masters. Yeah, I know. I've entered a Masters race, and even just clicking the button that said Masters, it just doesn't feel right. But like I said, I don't race anymore, and I go to Vegas. I rock up. This is the last 3 or 4 years. I do one race a year. It's Supernats. I get too excited when I get there. I go out partying. I play craps. I try and compete against these 15-year-old kids. Last time I actually won a couple of heat races, but I've entered Masters this year because Dad's like, mate, you don't take it seriously these days. So just go and have some fun.
Yeah.
Like if I go out, the Masters guys are going out as well. So I feel like I'm on a level playing field. So that's what I sort of thought.
Is it going to be weird for you coming all the way to the States and having to take on Kip Foster in the Masters category? Is you're probably your most likely competition?
Kip is fast. He races on the weekend
really
against like X30, our junior drivers. And mate, he's still top 5. Competing against the best that we've got. So one thing I would say is me and Kip, we do get involved in a lot of crashes together. He doesn't want me beating him. I don't want to be beaten by him as well. So the chances are, if we're racing together, we're probably going to wipe each other out. So, someone else will probably take out the win if we're both being competitive, because he's not going to want to let me win. I'm not going to want to let him win as well. But Kip, very fast driver. He still puts in a lot of effort to be a better driver himself. He doesn't have to at whatever age he's in the 40s. Like, he's won enough races, but he still wants to be as good as what he was or what he still is. So full credit to him. Yeah, like I said, I'll have to race him, no doubt, but I just know that I'm going to end up with a crash team at some point. Whether it's a practice session or a final, I still speak to the guy. Like, I still say hello politely, but there's no doubt we're going to end up in the barriers at some point.
Awesome. Can't wait. Now we have something to watch in Masters for sure.
Yeah.
Which is
I don't want to watch Masters though. Like, that's the thing. I never used to watch it. I want to be in senior, but look, let's just see how I go in Masters. If I can hopefully get a good result, then I might even just step back into senior next year. Just say, look, you know what? I've won a Super Nats, and that's what I just sort of want to tick that box. I've had 2 seconds and a third, and multiple pole positions, and heat race wins, and I just haven't ever taken the first place trophy home. I've actually got 3 trophies still stuck in the USA because I told Eric Jones, until I win a Super Nats, you can keep my trophy. So there's 3 Super Nats trophies somewhere in his shed or something like that I've never taken.
Yeah, well, hopefully this year, man, you get to bring all 4 of them home, including that illustrious P1. But, man, I think, for us, really a pleasure having you on the show. Always great getting to talk to you, getting to see you, hopefully in Vegas this year. And thanks for giving us your time, man. It's been great.
Now, look, thanks for as well. And I really appreciate, the effort you guys have gone to promote karting and to have me on board as well. Sorry about some of the technical difficulties, but I look forward to seeing you guys in Vegas, and it'd be good to have a beer and catch up.
Absolutely, man.
We'll see you at the craps table for sure.
Hell yeah.
That's it, mate.
Well, to everybody else, thanks for watching this week's episode of Off the Grid. We'll see you on track.
See you guys.